how many Instagram stories he's made about me. How many episodes has he talked about me? How many episodes has he dedicated entirely to me or my friends? It's pretty funny that I don't have to actually say anything. He just constantly gets in trouble on his own because everyone can see that he is behaving in this hysterical manner, which is the confused Zionism of Ethan Klein. It's a really good video. He has a new channel that I guess, or a smaller channel, and this video already picked up a lot of steam. 153,000 views in a matter of 3 days, and a lot of people whose opinion I do respect have who've suggested that this is a good video.
Crime is wanting a two-state solution instead of one, and thinking it's not okay to kill Israeli civilians. That's it.
At the end of January this year, Ethan Klein of H3H3 Productions posted what is undeniably one of the most popular pieces of pro-Israel propaganda that the internet has seen in months. The video boasts more than 200,000 likes and over 3 million views. And whilst Ethan would probably balk at this video being called pro-Israel, it was even initially sponsored by ExpressVPN, an Israeli-owned company whose owners have extensive links to the Israeli military through funding it, and also even going as far to fund trips for Israeli soldiers perpetrating the genocide in Gaza to go back and see their family. Now, the original goal of Ethan's video was to deplatform and discredit the Twitch streamer Hasan Piker. However, the video has backfired because although Ethan had been on a near 15-month-long crash out from October of 2023 until January of 2025, what Ethan did is expose the paradoxical nature of his position, which he maintains is pro-Palestine, to an even larger audience than before. Put simply, you cannot maintain the notion that you are pro-Palestine when you use your YouTube platform of nearly 6 million subscribers to spread the exact same talking points that have been utilized by the Israeli government to justify the extermination.
A former E-fan leaked the letter they received from his lawyer. What is this? Do this or get sued. Someone asked me to post this by itself, so here you go. In a previous post, I shared the email I received from Klein's lawyer over an alleged minute-and-a-half clip. Upload this snark page that they are claiming does not fall under fair use. The rest of the letter is basically just legal jargon about what fair use is. What the clip posted apparently doesn't fall under the umbrella, yada, yada. But the good part is the demands, so I don't face litigation, mind you. They addressed this to an incorrect name and addressed me as Mr. when I'm a woman, so not sure how people are going to Google me. Anyways, enjoy and maybe check your emails. 2, you provide our office with all the correspondence you have had with the moderators of H3 Snark. What? 3, you provide our office with all the correspondence you've had with other H3 Snark users. 4, you provide our office with all the correspondence you've had with Reddit. And 5, you provide our office with information regarding the identities of H3 Snark moderators. If you do not or cannot satisfy all 5 conditions, TEI will sue you for copyright infringement and misrepresentation. Keep in mind that the federal court filings are public. Anyone performing a simple Google search on you, let alone a background check, will discover this information. Once judgment is entered against you, the court's finding that you engage in copyright infringement and lied in a legal document will also be publicly available. You have until March 25th, 2025 to agree to these terms. Oh my God. Is this real? Is this actually what? Is this straight up? No. Someone attached a legal letterhead to this? Like, this is childish. This was the post before this. I was locked out of my old college email for a while and finally got back in today. And looky here, I had allegedly posted a clip on the Snark page when it was active where Dan admitted that the main sub was banning anyone active in Snark. Guess they didn't like that too much. Shall I post the highlights of the letter? Dude, this is ridiculous, man. What is happening? I don't even understand like what the purpose of such a thing would be. Like, he just thought maybe he could bully random. If this is real, if an actual lawyer wrote this and it's not fake, okay, if an actual legit lawyer wrote this and it's not just like someone doing psyops or something, it just sounds so insane. Dude, this I can't in good conscience assume that this is like I can't believe that this would be real. His name is there. Look him up. No, I know that's the same lawyer. That's Ethan's lawyer. We know that that's the same lawyer, chat. I know that's the same lawyer that sued Noah, or not sued, but sent a cease and desist to Noah Samson. I'm simply stating that this like suing random Redditors for posting videos of what Ethan Klein has said is so incredible to me that I doubt that any lawyer would even write a CND like this. And it feels as though this is like simply a way to extract private information, like personal information about people, and turn it into a matter of public record with the exclusive purpose of just like using that information to to silence critics. As a lawyer, any lawyer can do something stupid for enough money, Lamau. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. Like, hey, random anonymous Reddit user, we have decided that if you don't give us something totally irrelevant to the copyright claim, like this is written like if you have a copyright infringement issue, you can't make additional demands. Like that's extortion. What the only demand you can make is to take the copyright down, right? Am I crazy? Am I wrong? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. You can't just be like, hey, we found you in violation of this copyright, which means that you posted a clip on a subreddit that we have my client has a copyright over. So now you have to, send us a video of yourself dancing in your underwear. Like that's okay. Cool. What do you mean? You can't do that, right? Like you can't. I'm not crazy, right? I don't think you could just like make a completely separate demands from someone that over a copyright claim. You either tell them to remove the copyright claim, which usually platforms will actually oblige, and if they don't oblige, then you might be liable for it. But in this situation, it feels crazy to be like, you have to give me private correspondence. That poster did say in the comments that Poopy's lawyer never followed Poopies. Are you talking about Ethan? Yeah. Hey, if you, a random anonymous Reddit user, want to avoid costly litigation and also your private information becoming public through litigation, you have to comply with these demands that we're making. Damn, bro, I found you in violation of my copyright. You posted my copyright somewhere, and now I want you to give me $7 million. I want you to release the text messages that you have with your mom. I want you to tell me what your deepest, darkest secrets are. And if you don't comply, I will sue you over copyright. What the you can only get this kind of stuff during the discovery phase of litigation. Yeah, I feel like this is a lawyer knows that a legal letterhead holds a lot of weight for the average person who doesn't know how the law works and is simply trying to scare people into revealing information that they do not have any reason to reveal. It's just an intimidation tactic, which is what a cease and desist is in many circumstances. But this is like something different than that even. He's been bragging about doing this on his Instagram for months. He's openly bragged about using this as an intimidation tactic. Yeah. Yeah. You posted my copyrighted content on a separate platform. Now you have to be my slave for 34 days. I've decided this. If you don't comply, we will sue you. It has worked against people. If you're some student who lives paycheck to paycheck, you will not fight this. I know, but this is toothless. There is no fighting this in general. I guess this is the reason why you send a CND like this, or like you threaten to do litigation like this, is because it works on as an intimidation tactic. It works on people who are truly powerless, like random anonymous Reddit users. What a fall from grace. What a goddamn fall from grace for Ethan Klein. Holy Ethan Fair Use Klein. Poor people, like broke ass college students, and so pathetic. Holy god damn. To add insult to injury here, aside from Ethan's history in successful litigation to defend fair use, how ironic this moment is. this very same lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, or at least this very same law firm that has been defending Ethan in a counter slap is lost against that other billionaire guy that he hates, who he apparently kept calling a Ponzi schemer, Brian Kavanaugh. This reads like it's fake, but they made it seem like it's from said law firm. I just can't believe an actual lawyer would write something this dumb. I know. Ryan, not Brian. I apologize. His website defaming his enemy, Brian Kavanaugh, comparing him to Harvey Weinstein, was just taken down. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. YouTuber Ethan Klein loses anti-slap appeal in producer Ryan Kavanaugh defamation case. California Court of Appeal upholds a prior ruling that the influencer may have defamed the film financier by falsely claiming that he was running a Ponzi scheme. YouTuber Ethan Klein lost a motion to dismiss the defamation case brought against him by producer Ryan Kavanaugh after the California Court of Appeal upheld a prior ruling on Thursday. Klein, who was famous for his H3Issue podcast and internet troll persona, filed an anti-slap motion to try to get the former Relativity Media CEO and film financier's initial complaint stricken, claiming his comments fall under free speech after Kavanaugh accused the influencer of defamation. Ryan Kavanaugh brought an action against Ethan Klein and TED Entertainment, TEI, Inc., for defamation and defamation by implication, alleging they falsely accused him of running a Ponzi scheme, the court explained in a summary and documents obtained by the Wrap. The trial court denied defendants' anti-slap motion to strike Kavanaugh's complaint. We affirm. So Ryan Kavanaugh, who is a billionaire and not exactly a great guy himself, okay, sued, as far as I understand, brought a defamation case against Ethan Klein, and Ethan Klein tried to dismiss the defamation case and failed to dismiss the defamation case as of, I think, like last week, April 6th, as of 4 days ago. He's been deleting all the YouTube VODs where he defamed Ryan and took down the website. He's probably going to try to settle now that he lost the appeal. Apparently, E kept using an article to show proof of Ryan's Ponzi scheme, but the article was quickly taken down, but E kept using it as proof anyway. When you get the anti-slap dismissed, you go straight to damages, if I recall correctly. When you fail an anti-slap in California, basically that just means that it was decided that he defamed Ryan, so now they just have to settle on damages. I'm pretty sure that the anti-slap is pretty powerful as far as tools goes, as far as legal tools goes in the state of California, as in if he had won the anti-slap, he would have been able to literally pay, like make Ryan Kavanaugh pay for his litigation as well, because it's anti-slap is basically is a tool that allows, ironically enough, people like anonymous Reddit users and people who are less powerful to successfully defend themselves against frivolous litigation that tries to stop them from exercising their free speech. So after, I'm not saying Ryan Kavanaugh is a good dude, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. I don't know enough about him. It seems like the courts have determined he wasn't doing a Ponzi scheme, though. So I will not be saying that, let me tell you, okay? Yeah, they do not go to damages. That's incorrect. It just means the trial can proceed as normal. Even if frivolous lawsuit is a nightmare for most people, expensive, stressful, complicated, and time-consuming, yes, except Ryan Kavanaugh and Ethan Klein both have enough money to continue this, the process of litigation. Being friends with Lolo has given you an artificially high opinion of the intelligence and competence of lawyers, I guess. Yeah. SLAP is a strategic lawsuit against public participation. Ironic, he lost the appeal the day after he sent Noah the retraction demand letter and went on a tirade about suing everyone, including you. Talk about karma. Yeah. The irony of him using anti-SLAP, but also openly complaining on the show that his lawyer is restricted from actions against Redditors because of Section 230. Not only do we have Trump and Israel silencing pro-Palestine sentiment and blackbacking people, but on top of that, Ethan Klein is doing his own little version of that. He's just doing it in a very frivolous manner, in a much smaller manner. Okay, that's not. I mean, it is. He's doing it within his own confines, and seemingly, at least as it stands currently, the courts would probably not comply with his ridiculous little lawsuits. But who knows? He asked a lawyer on air if you could be sued for domestic terrorism. Shut the. No, he did not. No, that is. Is bro working with Beitar? What's happening? Okay, stop. I'm not entertaining this. Ethan's continuing to obsess over Hasan, asking a civil lawyer if Hasan can get sued for inciting terrorism. Ethan Klein tries to imply Hasan Piker has committed domestic terrorism or incites terrorism. First, he wants them to go to Gaza while journalists are being murdered. Now, while Trump is currently revoking citizenship, he jokes like this disgusting behavior.
For me, the better. The more better the world becomes. I think so, really. Any laws that we can go after Hasan for? Are you familiar with that? Has he broken any domestic terror laws or? No, probably not domestic terror laws, but like inciting. I mean, what can we do about that?
Yeah, that's out of my realm. I
enough.
usually do just civil stuff.
Sure, fair enough. Fair enough.
He's joking, I think. I don't know. It's just, that's wild. That's cool, man. Why does bro hate you this much? I don't know. I don't want to do that thing where I assume that like things that he's saying in jest, he means sincerely, except in this circumstance, it's hard for me not to assume that there's at least a little bit of seriousness backing this because he has actively called for my deplatforming. He has said in the past that he, like a couple months prior, I think he said he wants me to lose everything. And he seemingly hasn't stopped talking about me. So I don't know. Maybe he's joking. Maybe he's not joking. Who knows? He is a joke, however, because he's asking a civil litigator whether or not he could pursue like federal charges, personal injury lawyer. Can we claim he's terrorizing me by being sexy? Look at how hot he is in this photo. Sir, please look at this photo and tell me that this doesn't terrorize your mind.
Like, bro, get real. Can you please get real? Oh my God. Hasan's the type of dude who watches himself in the mirror when he has sex.
Mm-hmm.
He probably sets up a mirror and off watching himself.
I don't want to think about that, man.
Think about
Too
it.
much. Nope.
Think about it right now.
Stop.
Excuse me. Are you a lawyer or not? My lawyers can't do We have to sue him for being stupid and sexy. I hate it. Stupid, sexy Hasan. His armpit is out. How did he skip so many steps in the Hasan derangement syndrome? How did he skip like 11 steps? How is he like outflanking the likes of Sex Pestiny? It is wild. I feel like he's made this so cringe that even Destiny has been like, yeah, I'm done with this actually. Well, he's got his own court cases to worry about, I guess. It feels like he made it unfashionable.
You're useless to me, Tom.
Okay. All right. Anyway, according to the filings, the case started when Variety published a story in June 2019 article titled Ryan Kavanaugh accused by ex-partner of running a Ponzi scheme. In it, the trade wrote that Elon Spar filed a lawsuit against Kavanaugh in Los Angeles Superior Court. Kavanaugh persuaded him to go into business with Kavanaugh under false pretenses. Spar had developed an idea for a stock exchange in which the buyers could purchase equity in film projects. However, the outlet later updated its coverage to include a statement from Kavanaugh's team that he and Spar had satisfactorily resolved all their issues. Then in April 2021, Triller Fight Club 2 sued Klein and his podcast company for copyright infringement after they used footage of their pay-per-view fight and music event without permission. At the time, Klein alleged that Kavanaugh was behind the lawsuit despite not being directly involved. Former Relatively Media producer that was also the founder of Proxima Media, which had a controlling stake in Triller. Kavanaugh's complaint alleges that beginning on June 11, 2021, Klein launched a campaign to harass and defame him in retaliation for Triller Fight Club 2's copyright action, the court docs detailed. Klein used his YouTube channels and other social media platforms to disseminate the defamatory accusation in the Variety article that Kavanaugh ran a Ponzi scheme. Within hours of his publication in Variety, that accusation had been retracted and the article had been corrected. Klein knew of the retraction and correction, but repeatedly republished a false accusation over the following months. The case could have ramifications of the current influencer environment, as Klein was accused of encouraging his followers to continually update Kavanaugh's Wikipedia page and circulate clips on Reddit and other formats. Ultimately, Kavanaugh's lawyer, Amy McCann Roller, issued the following statement. This is an important case about the growth of online and professional trolling, which required a real analysis of free speech, of when free speech is no longer a harmless opinion. According to the court, Kavanaugh will now be allowed to pursue damages. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Good luck, I guess. Let him fight. I don't know. Maybe you should worry about that stuff instead of trying to sue random anonymous Redditors. Applaud yourself for getting off an already sinking ship before it became widely apparent. I mean, I didn't even get off the ship. He just didn't want to do the podcast anymore. And I was like, all right, that's fine. Like, you don't want to do content. Political, like politics, especially left politics, is a dangerous, treacherous space where everybody hates you, even if you have the best intentions, and it doesn't matter. It's not for every single person. I was so understanding. I didn't mind it. I was super understanding of it. I defended him for a very long time. There's a website called Does Ryan Kavanaugh Look Like Harvey Weinstein? Remember, it's still up. Yeah, I guess he hasn't sued him for that, which, you know, I think that'd be silly to sue him over something like that. Anyway, let's watch this.
Of tens of thousands of Palestinian people. Now, I have already made multiple videos on this which have accumulated well in excess of 1 million views on TikTok.
It looks
but
like it's
Ethan
gone.
Klein has chosen over and over again to ignore these videos in favor of going after smaller content creators who often make jokes at his expense but do not offer succinct criticisms of his thought. So what I thought I would do is critique Ethan's thought and demonstrate that he is not at all pro.
I don't like Ethan, but that seems like a bad ruling. I think the reason why he came after that specifically, the Ponzi scheme aspect of it specifically, is because it was the most overtly defamatory statement. Like other that Ethan has done in the process, while annoying, certainly from the perspective of the person that's being trolled, is not as easy to prove. Considering that it was a retracted article, I think it seems like going along with it. Wait, Ethan acknowledged on air it was retracted? Like, I'm not in favor of any billionaire being able, any wealthy person, whether it's Ethan Klein or Ryan Kavanaugh, being able to successfully stop someone from speaking, like, because you don't like what they're saying. Part of the reason why I'm like, part of the reason why I always say, like, I don't give a about whatever Ethan is chirping about whenever people are like, why don't you sue him, is because I think it's like a very bitch-made thing to do. Even if it's like an open and shut, even if there's an open and shut case, like Ethan openly acknowledging that in his own words while sitting next to me, that like the brothel that I went to in like 2010, getting raided for tax evasion in 2016, and then successfully suing both the police force and the Berlin government over defamation and winning. Like, he knew all of that and still went along with it recently, right? Like implying a bunch of horrible things.
Psycho shit.
It's like I don't know. It could be a control thing. Like why would someone like Hasan go have sex with a prostitute at a brothel in Europe that got later?
Oh, that's not what I meant. I just meant the cheating part.
No, what do you mean?
Just personally, I meant the cheating and the like part.
But why would someone like Hasan, with people throwing themselves at his feet, find the need to have sex with a prostitute?
Hasan Piker.
I don't know.
That was later raided for human trafficking. He lies about that. It says it was tax. It was both.
Interesting.
It was human trafficking and tax.
Basically, what they do is, I guess the authorities do routine investigations. They drop in to see if there's any like human trafficking there. They didn't find any human trafficking there.
Yeah, but he's
actually
implying that there was.
Right, because what they actually did arrest people for, as you said, was tax fraud and withholding Social Security contributions. So there was no arrests about human trafficking, in fact, and it's routine. And anyway, it was the people arrested were related to tax fraud.
Yeah, I mean the brothel is still in operation.
Yeah,
it's not like even if that in and of itself is like a fairly easy way to prove, especially paired up with like malicious intent, considering that he has said that he wants me to lose everything and that he hates me and all this stuff. I feel like there's a case there. I would never do such a thing because I think it's just stupid. It's a stupid thing to do. Let's watch this.
Palestine, because he is nothing more than a Westerner whose thought is dominated by Orientalism, and he therefore simply cannot offer a succinct political understanding of anything to do with the Middle East. Now, the concept of Orientalism was proffered by Edward Said. It was the first thing that I learnt about when I started my Middle Eastern Studies degree as an undergraduate back in 2019, and what it basically refers to is a distinction between them and us, them being non-Westerners and us being Westerners. And according to Said, this was produced through discourse, and what he meant by this was anything from travel writings, newspapers, stories, depictions, anything that you could think of which created a vision of people from the Middle East or the wider Orient. It is at its most basic media which seeks to create this distinction between them and us, and Ethan's video is a perfect example of it. Through this Orientalism and the discourse it produces, an essentialized image of the Oriental or Middle Easterner is created that is backwards, uncivilized, violent and savage, which is juxtaposed against the civility of the Occident or the West. Now, what is important to note here is that Orientalism is dialectical. It is not just about denigrating the other, creating this barbarous savage. It has always been about making Westerners feel superior, feel better about themselves, and so as to establish themselves as moral and enlightened, even when their politics and behaviour shows an exact opposite. Ethan's content around Palestine is a perfect example of this. He consistently deploys Orientalism to assuage his own feelings and to maintain the notion that he is pro-Palestine, and so he never has to avow the disgusting right-wing talking points that he spreads and the violence that these inflict on Palestinian people. Take this part of Ethan's so-called content nuke, where he speaks gleefully about the assassination of senior Hamas figures.
Disvalues, or, well, they were billionaires. Because they're all dead. They killed it all. They're all dead.
Or this part where he condemns Hasan Piker for his endorsement of Syed Hassan Nasrallah, the former leader of Hezbollah, who was killed in an Israeli strike last year.
Hezbollah is a paramilitary organization.
Do we like them or no?
They are a terrorist organization. Like they're designated. They are designated by the American state as a terrorist organization.
I do not like them then.
Well, like
I like what you like.
I don't have an issue with them. Let's just say.
This is Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. According to Hasan Piker, this man is a brilliant freedom fighter. But before we get into that, let's see how he...
Also, he stretched that statement as hard as he could, where I said, I don't have an issue with them, let's just say, to literally turn that into, he loves this guy, bro. Like, no explanation to undermine what I was saying. No context involved in that process. Clips are obviously cut. Did I say anything in between? Have I talked about Hassan Nasrallah extensively?
He feels about Jewish people. Here are some choice quotes from Hezbollah.
Also, then he turns around and says that Hassan Nasrallah is anti-Semitic, which is ironic because one of his most famous statements is about how a lot of dumb Arabs are anti-Semitic when they don't realize that Israel is not operating at the behest of Judaism, but instead operating at the behest of American empire. Now, of course, if he was even remotely curious about even learning about his enemies, he would know that reality. But of course, he doesn't know that reality. If he actually had done his research on clips of mine, there are plenty of other clips where I've talked about Hassan Nasrallah or Hezbollah, as a matter of fact.
His leader, Hassan Nasrallah. According to Shaul Shai, Hassan Nasrallah said in a speech delivered in Beirut, "What do the Jews want? They want security and money. Throughout history, the Jews have been Allah's most cowardly and avaricious creatures. If you look all over the world, you will find no one more miserly or greedy than they are."
Now, at first, I was just going to let this section of the content nuke play because it seemingly shows anti-Semitic statements by the leader of Hezbollah. But a quick look into this shows that much like the rest of Ethan's video, the sourcing is just absolutely terrible. He has gone on Wikipedia and repeated unequivocally what is put on there without bothering to check the veracity of anything. So let's quickly go through them. The first quote comes from the book of an Israeli official, Shul Shai, the former head of the IOF's military history department, a lifelong Israeli soldier. So it may be that this man made up his claims, especially since the articles he cites in his book are almost impossible to find now. And we all know that Israel, its government and senior officials don't necessarily love telling the truth. The second quote is not actually from Nasrallah. The source that Wikipedia cites is noted to be incorrect in this 2012 article. It is not a quote from Nasrallah. The third quote is perhaps the most outrageous of all of them cited by Ethan, because it is noted on the Wikipedia page that this is likely a lie. It literally notes that...
There's also direct quotes from him on camera, verbatim, talking about anti-Zionism and talking about, and for the record, make no mistake, I'm not here to argue on whether or not Hassan Nasrallah has opinions that I agree with. There are certainly plenty of opinions of Hassan Nasrallah that I do not agree with, okay? Like opinions around gay people, or I don't even know. There's probably a million different things I don't agree with Hassan Nasrallah. I still don't believe that he should have been assassinated alongside 2,000 people in a Beirut suburb. Oh my God, what an insane thing. I know.
That Charles Glass says that this was fake, and the managing editor of the newspaper that it was first published in said he had no faith in the article. The fourth quote is not from Nasrallah. The fifth, there is apparently no specific source provided in the book A Privilege to Die, but it does appear in the text of Hezbollah's Al-Ad, as well as in the same English language collection of Nasrallah's speeches. However, straight after is an emphasis that Hezbollah's fight is with Israel and not with Jews. The final quote is just a citation from the Ministry of Israeli Foreign Affairs. I am sorry, but I don't buy their nonsense so quickly. This is a ministry for a government that lies constantly. I mean, just this week, senior military officials in Israel felt comfortable lying about an overt war crime. They claimed that Palestinian paramedics who were executed whilst driving their ambulances didn't have their lights on, were acting suspiciously.
Well, the IDF did not randomly attack an ambulance. Well, last Sunday, several uncoordinated vehicles were...
What is your thoughts on the Jews? I love my Jews. Also, there's another thing that I must repeat and reiterate here. Hassan Nasrallah was not murdered in a campaign of mass murder by the apartheid state conducting a genocide, Israel, for any of the reasons that Ethan or anyone else brings up with regular frequency. He was murdered by the state of Israel in an unjustifiable, illegal bombing campaign over a totally sovereign nation that unfortunately has to reside right next to the apartheid state, for resisting against said apartheid state and trying to incur penalties upon the apartheid state for the crime of doing a genocide. That is the reason. And that's the same reason why Yemen keeps consistently getting bombed. And that's the exact same reason why people are getting black bagged on the middle of the street by the Gestapo here in the United States of America. It's all because in one way, shape, or form, people want Israel to stop its genocide, whether by speech or whether by force. That is the reason. Make no mistake.
Identified advancing suspiciously toward IDF troops without headlights or emergency signals.
And now there is literal video evidence showing the exact opposite. Israel will say and do anything because they rely on morons like Ethan believing absolutely anything because it fits with their narrative that the other are barbarous and evil monsters who commit crimes constantly. But then consider Ethan's reaction to this clip of his wife.
Just the other day, Bibi fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
Or he was like a moderating voice in the war room.
Yeah.
And he got...
How do you count a talking point that they killed or starved 2 million people? Genuinely asking, what talking point? Who did this? Who killed 2 million people? I'm so confused as to what you're talking about. What, chatter, just say, it's fine. You have probably been misguided. I don't know. The Yemen government? Do you mean the Yemen government in exile that is no longer entertained or recognized as the true government of Yemen? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about the Ansar Allah movement claiming that Saudi Arabia's and the UAE's Western-backed coalition forces starving the entirety of the Yemeni population, and then seemingly saying that that is actually the Houthis that did that? Because if that's the argument, yes, you're wrong. That wasn't the Ansar Allah. As far as the Yemen, the government of Yemen, I think you're talking about the government of Yemen in exile that was used as a puppet for the Saudi ambitions in Yemen. What Yemeni government? I'm Yemeni and I don't even know who he's talking about. No, I think he's doing this thing. I think he's doing this thing where people will say that like the that Saudi Arabia and UAE coalition forces did was actually because of all of those crimes are directly the responsibility of the Ansar Allah movement. I think he's misguided. Also, I don't think anybody, I don't know what the exact casualty numbers are, but I don't think even the Saudis killed 2 million people in Yemen, for the record. Yeah, no, I think Ansar Allah, no, they did not do that. I don't know the exact numbers. I can look it up right now if you want me to. I don't even know who would claim that there's a 2 million number anyway. I was making a pro-Yemen point on TikTok and someone said, but they starved 2 million people. Yeah, that person that you're talking to has no idea what they're saying. It's partially because Yemen is the poorest nation on the planet. That's pretty big part of that problem. There's not a lot of information and most people don't even care to understand the situation there. And you're asking me how to debate a TikTok comment. So I feel like this is not the best use of our time, but yeah, not even the Saudis use this argument. This is just Western depravity. There's no way to know the exact numbers. The situation is chaotic. There are also no longer valid institutions. All are puppets of Saudi, UAE, or Houthis, who I am neutral towards. The irony, of course, is that with the exception of the one guy who is still the former leader in exile, even his forces, even his coalition forces, have, in the aftermath of October 7, put down their arms and joined in unison the Ansar Allah movement and participate against the demonstrations against the state of Israel for the crime of genocide. And as far as I understand, are firmly committed to trying to stop Israel from committing a genocide. So there's like 3 guys at this point that are not on board with what the Ansar Allah movement is doing. Where have you read all that? Read all what? Anyway, let's continue.
Get rid of him, or at least a more moderate voice. I don't know anything about the guy. Just recognize his picture. He looked mean. I thought he was mean just because he looked mean.
No.
In the video, Hila is endorsing Yoav Gallant, Israel's former defense minister, a man who is wanted by the International Criminal Court, whose crimes far supersede any of those committed by either Nasrallah or any other leader of Hamas, the Houthis, or anyone you can think of. This is a man who said openly he wanted a total siege of the Gaza Strip.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים ב...
Yeah, I mean, just like this could be a good guy even after being designated as a war criminal, okay? Ethan also does this exact same thing by falsely claiming that a TikToker dude who's 19 years old in Yemen, is a terrorist and a member of the Al-Houthi family, okay? Without any evidence whatsoever, and only evidence to suggest the exact opposite. Meanwhile, anyone, including those who have served in the IDF that might be very close to Ethan Klein, it's a bridge too far to call them a terrorist, even though the IOF is a terrorist organization, one that is far worse than Hamas, as a matter of fact, for the record. Like, the standards are completely out of whack.
He is the man who prosecuted the genocide, which Ethan loves to say that he opposed.
And for the record, everybody knows, I hope at this point, what my opinion is. I am much more understanding than other leftists in terms of people who have served in any military, as long as their current actions reflect that they understand the wrongdoing that they participated in. And this is included but not limited to, you know, people who have become anti-Zionists in the aftermath of their service within the Israeli occupying force. There is, I think, because given my position, living in the heart of empire, living in a settler colony myself, I think I'm a little bit more understanding. It's if you are unapologetic and still continue to defend the Israeli occupying force, defend your service and all that, I think that's when we have disagreements. That's when I think you're not a good person, just so everybody understands.
And yet he let his wife take a break with almost no pushback, even though she referred to him as a really great guy. Hila and Ethan's claim was that they didn't really know who Yoav Gallant was or what he was like, even.
But IOF and IDF are separate entities, because I thought IOF is the naming designation of the Israeli Defense Force. I refuse to call it the Israeli Defense Force because they're not defending themselves or defending anything, really. They're defending an occupying force, which is why people who are pro-Palestine will often call the IDF IOF, the Israeli Occupying Force, because that's what they do. That's what they are doing, and I think that that's a much better naming convention for the Israeli occupying force. Called moral defectors selfish for not serving. Oh my God, yeah.
Though that clip of Yoav Gallant claiming that Israel was going to institute a total siege was noted by South Africa at the International Court of Justice and was a very popular clip for noting Israel's genocidal intent in Gaza. And so what I think that this is indicative of is either one of two things, which is that Ethan and Hila don't know anything about Israel, Palestine, colonization, and the wider Middle East North Africa region, which is undeniably true, or that Hila could not take the backlash when they avowed their actual views, which I think is the more likely of the two, because the idea that they just didn't know who Yoav Gallant was, one of the most senior figures in Israel's military, is fundamentally ridiculous. And so this would mean that Hila endorsed a man whose war crimes far eclipse any of those perpetrated by the organizations that Ethan thinks Hasan should be deplatformed for.
Yeah, like, unironically, once again, Hassan Nasrallah, even if you were to add Hezbollah's actions in Syria, okay? Even if you were to add Hezbollah's actions in Syria, which, by the way, Ethan does, but in the dumbest way possible, which, once again, shows how little he knows about anything, where he erroneously says that Hezbollah killed 500,000 people in Syria, which is the most psychotic thing I've ever heard, overlaid in front of a city that has been barrel bombed, with the implication that Hezbollah has a air force. Okay, how did they do that? How did they kill 500,000 people and get access to barrel bombs and an air force? Shocking number.
Portraying in even a semi-positive light and offering context for why they do what they do. So why is it that Ethan just does not carry the same energy for when it comes to his wife in comparison to Hasan Piker? And what makes this even worse is that Ethan didn't just let Hila get away with this with basically no pushback. He actually took to his Instagram stories to defend her, arguing that the quote was...
Like, there's also, once again, there's so there is so, like, this is a 56-month subscriber, progressive, pro-aggressive Omar. Hezbollah helped the Assad regime murder nearly 1 million Syrians. At Hasanabi, what are you talking about? The idea that, once again, first of all, I'm not even defending Hezbollah's actions in Syria, but I'm simply defending an insane statement that you are making. You are doubling the number of total casualties on all sides with the assumption that it was Hezbollah and simply the Assad regime's own military. Like, there's the Russian military's involvement in Syria. There's obviously Hezbollah is involved in Syria as well. There are literally coalition forces, including Salafists that the Turkish government trained, for example, including, which is also another extension of NATO, by the way. Turkey's actions in Syria are an extension of NATO, just so you understand, make no mistake. So they're still American-backed by way of Turkey. And then also on the other side, direct American and CIA involvement. Direct American and CIA involvement in terms of the militia movements, the Kurdish militia movements in the region, specifically in Rojava. I'm friends with someone who went and fought in Rojava alongside the YPJ. I'm very good friends with someone who fought in Rojava alongside the YPJ, as a matter of fact. I've had him on this broadcast on numerous occasions. Okay? Do you deny the demographic change by Hezbollah? No, I don't know what the no. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never said anything about notice how you just made a insane statement, okay, without mentioning any of the other parties involved, doubled the casualty numbers in the entirety of the Syrian civil war, attributed it to mostly Hezbollah in a conversation where I'm saying, no, it's not Hezbollah that's responsible for 1 million deaths. Not Ethan didn't even make this claim, for the record. Ethan said 500,000, which is the total number of casualties in the Syrian civil war. I was in the process of explaining that Ethan is wrong for saying Hezbollah killed 500,000 people in Syria. It's ridiculous. Okay. You doubled that number, said it was Hezbollah. And when you recognized that you were in the wrong, you turned around and moved the goalpost to something different. What are we doing? Following is 2406, but a 56-month sub. No, he is. He's a long-term community subscriber who probably unfollowed and then refollowed.
As a result of being after October the 7th. I mean, he doesn't provide this kind of charity to people like Nasrallah or people from Lebanon, people in the Houthis or wherever, who have suffered under Western imperialism and larger terror attacks than October the 7th. No, he just thinks that this applies to Israelis only, and he doesn't seem fussed that his wife endorsed a man who referred to Palestinians as human animals, because whilst he seeks to make the distinction and say, oh, he was probably only talking about Hamas, the thing is that this was the man who oversaw the Gaza genocide that Ethan says he condemns, but he doesn't mind this man referring to Palestinians as human animals so as to establish them as subhumans worthy of death. No, he thinks that that's completely fine because he was a moderating voice who wanted to end the war. But he didn't want to end the war because of his opposition to the Gaza genocide. He just wanted to end the war because he thought all of Israel's aims had been achieved, and that no more aims could be achieved via military means. So all of the destruction and mass killing that was already perpetrated in the Gaza Strip, well, he thought that was enough. This isn't even the first time that Ethan or Hila have displayed their love for a figure who is undeniably implicated in racially...
Hasan, I'm telling you, you're not accurate. You're not accurate on Syria. With all love and respect, my people and I experienced the brutality of Hezbollah, not you nor Ethan. Dude, I'm not saying Hezbollah was a good force in Syria. I'm simply stating that Hezbollah nor the Assad regime murdered 1 million Syrians, even though the total casualty number is closer to 600,000. And yes, a big part of that was Russian military involvement and the coalition forces under the command, or at least the directive, of Bashar al-Assad. There has never been a moment where I've defended Bashar al-Assad. I do not defend him at all. This conversation is about something entirely different. I'm not saying Hezbollah in Syria was a force for good.
Motivated slaughter. Take George Bush, for example, who in this 2017 clip, Ethan says he loves.
I got to tell you, I saw George Bush on was it Jimmy Kimmel? And I was like, man, I love this guy. I love George Bush.
As a dude,
He's a
George Bush
He's got
is
a lot of
is-
character.
He's a
out
bro,
there,
dude.
You know, he's like painting. He just made a book of portraits. He's drawing portraits of veterans.
This was a guy who said he wanted to launch a crusade in the Middle East and then went on to do so.
And the American people are beginning to understand. Now, this crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
Slaughtering hundreds of thousands of Iraqi people, all in the name of oil, something which Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, literally admitted in 2006.
Hey, this is journalism. It's so weird. Mother on journalism, and when I'm trying to do journalism, they go, "Why are you doing that?" What do you mean? I'm just chilling. We're just vibing. Yeah, we're just vibing. We're vibing big time.
Hasan uncritically interviewed this kid for about an hour. It was the most brazen display of disgusting terrorist propaganda that I have maybe ever seen in Western media.
So if a 19-year-old from Yemen, who isn't even actually a member of the Houthis, but simply supports them, is an evil terrorist who shouldn't be allowed a platform, what does that make Ethan and Hila, people who endorse war criminals responsible for the slaughter of far, far more people than the Houthis?
Left.
Once again, also, Hila was in the Israeli occupying force. And not only that, but also literally participated in a raid in the West Bank, which is illegal. Okay? Israeli military presence in the West Bank is illegal. Ethan himself has said that West Bank settlers are open season targets. Like if random Yemeni TikTokers are terrorists, then what is your wife at that point? You know what I mean? Like that's a war crime. The only difference here is that America doesn't consider that to be a war crime because Israel is an extension of America.
Or right. I always thought that despite our differences, there was one thing we could all agree on. And what was that? That we love America and everything she stands for.
And then there's this part of the content nuke, which has leapt out to me every single time I have watched it. Because why on earth would you say that everyone can agree on loving America? This is most certainly not a universal position. From Iraq to Cambodia, to Vietnam, to Afghanistan, to Korea, across the entire world, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people have suffered under the yoke of American imperialism just over the last century. And even the wider nexus of states that the United States supports is obscene. Take its two current closest allies in the Middle East, the United Arab Emirates and Israel. Both are countries currently facing genocide cases at the International Court of Justice. The United Arab Emirates for its involvement in Sudan, and Israel for its horrifying crimes in Gaza, which absolutely would not be possible without the rhetorical and material support that it was offered by both the Biden administration and the current Trump administration. If Israel didn't have the massive amounts of military aid which America only sells to them so they can maintain an edge over other countries in the region, it would stand no chance against countries like Iran. And so to sit there and say, oh, I love America and we all agree on this, whilst America is responsible for the genocide that he claims to simultaneously condemn, is fundamentally ridiculous. And it really does show you that Ethan just does not like anything which is anti-Western. Any group who is anti-West are differently evil. They are monstrous savages whose ideology has no explanation, who are fueled by anti-Semitic hatred in most cases. But when it comes to the obscene violence of the United States, oh well, you know, it's just politics and we all love it, really. I do not think the Orientalism which dominates Ethan Klein's thought could be any more clear. He sees a 19-year-old from Yemen, Rashid al-Haddad, as a monstrous, violent savage who is an anti-Semitic beast, which, by the way, the kid did apologise for, but he has no problem with his own thought. He never never wants to confront the fact that he refers to America as something which we all love, even though it was the country which sold advanced weaponry to Saudi Arabia as it bombed Yemeni civilians. It was the country that refueled Saudi planes as they tore Yemeni weddings and other social events to pieces with their horrifying bombardment. It was the one who trained their pilots as they manufactured a siege and starved the people of Yemen. And this is what defined Rashid al-Haddad's life. And Ethan couldn't have some sympathy and say, you know what, this is what motivates this guy. This is why many Yemenis don't actually like the West. But instead of doing that, Ethan would rather sit there and essentialize them and try and portray this as it is some kind of innate anti-Semitism, some random hatred of the West. In the content nuke, Ethan literally refers to the Houthis as the bad guys.
All right, so these guys are clearly the bad guys. So my question is, how does Hasan...
Oh, dude. My bad. I didn't know they were the bad guys. Okay. Well, how can I argue against that? Yeah, suspiciously, this quote-unquote pro-Palestinian content creator is saying that virtually every group resisting against Israel's genocide, they're all the bad guys. Israel is bad too, but they're just like maybe less bad, maybe more bad, who knows? But these guys are definitely bad, okay? What's the argument here then? You are pro-Palestinian if you consider... Okay, Piker. If you're pro-Palestine, if you're pro-Palestinian emancipation, and you even at times agree that Israel is doing war crimes, sometimes you disagree with that, whatever. Maybe you believe that Israel is doing a genocide on Monday, but you don't believe it on Tuesday. Who knows? You keep calling it a war. Sometimes maybe you call it a genocide. I don't know if he does. Actually, I don't even know, okay? But you keep saying every single person that is resisting against Israel's unjustifiable genocide of the Palestinians is wrong, immoral, barbaric, bad, then it's going to, I'm going to start to assume that you don't actually hate what Israel is doing, especially if most of your commentary revolves around criticizing those who speak out against Israel's atrocities, criticizing those who are actually doing anything against Israel in terms of making Israel incur a penalty for the crime of doing a genocide. What's the expectation here? That the Palestinians are simply supposed to just die and the rest of the world is supposed to let them die and then turn around and say, oh, we felt so bad. Is that what it is? So we can feel good about ourselves? Do a land acknowledgement? Weird.
Cover such a genocidal, violent, misogynistic, homophobic, terroristic organization.
Which really does show his childish, marvelized understanding of politics, because if you think that the Houthis are somehow the evil baddies and America and Israel are some kind of axis of good, then I don't know what to say to you. You have the political acumen of a child. And Ethan's argument as to why they're their bad guys is the classic Orientalist tropes. He refers to their slavery based on some rather dubious evidence published by pro-Saudi outlets, and Ethan acts as if it is bizarre in his recent lawsuit to quibble with the State Department or what Saudi Arabian news outlets are saying. But anyone with a basic knowledge of how you write an academic essay or make an argument would tell you, well, if the Saudis are bombing the hell out of the Yemeni people and trying to claim that the Houthis are the evil of all evils, they might be willing to make things up. But what I think is most important to note about all of Ethan's condemnations of the Houthis for their regressive politics is that Israel, the progressive nation, which along with America he sees as the good guys, could be accused of all of these same things to a horrifying extent. I mean, take Israel's use of slavery. A recent article which appeared in Haaretz referred to the IOF practice of Israelis taking Palestinians as human shields and sometimes killing them for fun as a form of slavery. And when you think about it, denying these people autonomy and forcing them into a horrifying working environment is slave-esque, isn't it? And his highlighting of misogyny is the most obscene part, because yes, the Houthis are probably misogynistic. Misogyny is prevalent all over the entire world. But when it comes to Israel, the extremity of their gender-based violence is absolutely obscene. A recent UN report documented this disproportionate targeting of women and young girls. It targeted the use of sexual violence, how their reproductive rights are infringed upon by Israel. So stop sitting.
There's a lot more hard evidence, by the way, from the United Nations of Israel's standard practice of sexual abuse and systematic destruction of reproductive health care from the Israeli military against the Palestinian population, as opposed to the mass directed by Hamas atrocity propaganda that Ethan unironically uses in his Context Puke. As of today, there is no hard evidence that mass took place and was directed by Hamas especially on October 7. There is, however, evidence for this. I doubt that Ethan has talked about this stuff. I don't know. Maybe he did.
Sitting there and pretending that you're some kind of defender of women's rights because you oppose the Houthis, but generally seem to have no problem with the IOF, and you haven't made a near 2-hour-long video about Israel's supporters, people like Lonabox, who Ethan literally invited on his show. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. This is who Ethan thinks is a good person to criticize Israel in the right way. A person who has talked about like Israel's children in the head and disparage those, disparage the hard evidence against such things, saying it's simply a mistake or an accident. Here he is smiling ear to ear in Israel alongside Sex Pestany with a former government employee of Israel, by the way. Like,
ridiculous. And Lonabox is a particularly important figure to highlight because Ethan, as I said, brought him on his show, but as the photo shows, he went on a trip to Israel, laughing and smiling along with Eilon Levy, Netanyahu's former spokesman, until he was fired over some personal issues. But
do you know how sniping jobs work?
Ultimately, this guy has sought to make a career out of justifying the extermination of Palestinians. He was a pivotal figure, appearing on Western TV, using his British accent, which makes him endearing.
Does Ethan even have clout on the left? He did at a certain point, but this is not the reason why there's a lot of focus on his work. He's a massive content creator with a fairly large audience. He literally restarted his formerly inactive YouTube channel, H3H3 Productions, in an effort to do this Hasbara, in an effort to do this cynical defense of Israel, while never really saying that he's like fully throatedly supporting Israel, but instead choosing to actively attack every single person who does criticize Israel and demand that they get deplatformed. So I think that it's pretty significant if a content creator, especially one that had so much clout in the past, is spending all of his time, effort, and resources instead of directing it towards I don't know, fundraisers for Palestinians, or instead of talking about the atrocities that Israel is committing. This is the overwhelming majority of his commentary on Israel's genocide. He goes after content creators no matter how large or small. So yeah, I think it's not about his clout necessarily on the left, but more so how much time, how much effort he spent, how much social capital he's actually destroyed in the process. Even Ethan never had leftist clout. He had normie clout amongst mostly people who are, not meaning this critically, but the most common memesters, normies. Yeah.
To Westerners to justify the extermination of Palestinians, to lie about what was going on in Gaza so it was plausible for Israel to carry out its genocide. And since this point, he's continued making videos, including one from the other day where he explained why Palestinians had no right to the West Bank. And yet Ethan just does not care. He's not making 2-hour-long videos about Lonabox. He's making 2-hour-long videos about Hasan because he spoke to a 19-year-old. Hasan didn't spend time with the former spokesman of Benjamin Netanyahu, a man accused of leading a state perpetrating genocide. How can you reconcile the idea that you are pro-Palestine when you welcome Lonabox onto your show and don't care about this, yet spend your time crying about Hasan interviewing a 19-year-old? It is a choice to make a video like this which sought to deplatform one of the biggest pro-Palestinian voices on Twitch. It is a choice to engage in smears of the...
It's not the YouTube drama. It's the YouTube drama cloud he has. He can spit lies because no one will look it up. I have considered why these slop tubers hate on you, and it's because you do not auto-agree with them, and you talk about things they do not know, and it shakes up their worldview. Yeah, also, considering that a lot of my commentary revolves around undermining and directly tackling pre-established social conditioning that you get from an early age, whether it be unconditional support to Israel. This is pre-October 7, where most people had that social conditioning, or that these brown guys overseas are not like the scary monsters who are equipped with a copy of the Quran that says you have to kill all infidels, or whatever the people believe, the Islamophobia that they learn. This makes it incredibly easy to just turn around and engage in reactionary commentary, even from the framework of being a supposed progressive liberal. If every outlet, if every institution that you trust when you're growing up, even as a progressive, even as someone who fancies themselves to be a liberal, is telling you that these are big, brown, scary bad guys and they're barbaric, then it's much easier for someone who also presents themselves as a liberal or progressive, or even, dare I say, pro-Palestine, to be able to engage in commentary such as this. This is literally the basis for how Sam Harris made so much leeway with his Islamophobic sentiment while still maintaining the presence that he was a liberal. He was a high-minded, intellectual liberal.
Pro-Palestinian movement, and to seek to exoticize any form of resistance against the state of Israel. You do not refer to Israel as the bad guys. You do not condemn people who openly support Israel, even though it engages in these excesses. Take homophobia. You have Israel's Minister of Finance who said that he was a proud homophobe. He's in control of the economy. In control of the Israeli police is Itamar Ben-Gvir, a man who is also homophobic and once kicked a transgender person and organized a rally in Jerusalem where they paraded around farm animals to mock pride parades. And you sit there and go, oh, the Houthis, they're homophobic, they're this, they're that. It is just pinkwashing, Ethan. You are seeking to create a barbarous other who is unlike the Westerner, who does not share our values, and therefore they are the bad guys, and anyone who might seek to offer them any form of context is someone who supports evil, terroristic, genocidal entities. But your own wife who endorsed Gallant, oh, you know, she's your wife, it's understandable. October the 7th had just happened. And then you think about the West allies, the people who oppose the Houthis, the good guys, according to Ethan Klein, the nexus of pro-Western states. You have Saudi Arabia, most of the Gulf countries, who use the kafala system, something which is equivalent to modern slavery. They invite foreign workers over under promises that they're going to find new and great lives in Saudi Arabia. Then they take their passports and effectively offer them no rights. And many people have referred to this as modern slavery. So why is it the nexus of pro-Western states are the good guys in Ethan's political understanding? Because whilst Ethan might say, well, I'll condemn Israel, I'll condemn Saudi Arabia, this is what America and Israel have helped to set up and maintain in the Middle East for decades now. They want dictatorial regimes like those of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, because these keep people quiet. You know, they will perhaps normalize with Israel, allow it to carry out its ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, destroy any hopes of a Palestinian state, whilst they hide behind the idea of a two-state solution. Any time that these things are perpetrated by an ally of the West, it doesn't matter. It's not a problem which is indicative of how rotten and...
There's nothing more powerful than a corked up white boy with a British accent, well equipped with a Middle Eastern Studies undergraduate degree. I didn't know. Someone said he had a PhD as well in Middle Eastern Studies. I'm telling you, dude, is OP. Because at the end of the day, no matter how white I am, people are going to be like, your name's Hasan, shut the fuck up. Okay, they hear a guy like this, they're like, wait a minute. On this issue, he's clearly not biased. You know, I have my biases.
Evil these ideologies are to the core. Instead, for Ethan, it is just okay. It is something that is basically not even worth mentioning because it's perpetrated by the allies of the country that he so loves. Now, Ethan, the definitely pro-Palestine content creator, like many other pro-Israel news outlets and Zionist content creators online, chooses to focus on the Houthi slogan, "Death to America, a curse upon the Jews, death to Israel, victory to Islam." And whenever I've watched someone's video, you know, they've highlighted that it's just a slogan from people who are oppressed. But what I don't think they've noted is that Ethan comes from a country with elected officials like Randy Fine. I mean, let's just read out one of the statements that he put out on Twitter. "There is no suffering adequate for these animals. May the streets of Gaza overflow with blood." This man, who is part of the most powerful government in the world, that is actually making the streets of Gaza overflow with blood currently, and has been for a year and a half, well, that's okay, you know. We don't focus on those as representing the rotten nature of Western society, a pervasiveness of terrorism. No, that's the country that Ethan loves. For Ethan, the Houthis, whose attacks on Israel pertain specifically to Israel's genocide in the Gaza Strip, I mean, they literally stopped when there was a ceasefire. He is more obsessed with their slogans than the comments and sayings of high-up US officials about exterminating people in the Gaza Strip. And it's not just Randy Fine. You've got others like Brian Mast and many other senior American politicians who were happy to talk about exterminating Palestinians as Israel, their closest ally, actually did that.
I would encourage the other side to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians, as is frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II.
The Houthis are not doing that. Theirs may be a slogan which people find offensive. However, ultimately, they are not actually perpetrating the things that they are claiming. But let's not just focus on America, the head of the snake. Let's also focus on Israel and the slogans that they love, because they're part of Ethan Klein's magical Avengers team who fight against the bad guys like the Houthis, Hezbollah and Hamas. But here's an article by the Israeli Gershon Shafir from 1984, who notes that at present Arabs are compared in sophisticated religious exegesis to the 7 Canaanite nations and to Amalek, and in a popular utterance to a donkey. Now, I think that this is particularly important because what you have here is documentation from the 1980s, before Benjamin Netanyahu had ever been Prime Minister, of Israelis referring to Palestinians as Amalek, a biblical enemy of Israel who must be wiped from the face of the earth. The same with the 7 Canaanite nations, the people who had to be destroyed for the existence of Israel. Why is it that people like Ethan love to talk about the Houthi slogans but don't like to talk about these? And this isn't even where it ends. What I'd also like to note is that in the 1980s, the slogan...
For the record, the Houthi movement, the Houthi movement's banner and its slogan saying "a curse upon the Jews" is, yes, absolutely unacceptable. But I think Norm Finkelstein's assessment on the situation is poignant, where it is the banner itself is directly as a consequence of Israel's actions, as Israel is seen as the only expression of Judaism in the region that every single person has experienced. That's the only thing they know. That's what it is. There's a very different attitude, and the statement Jews and Israel are interchangeable in the region. We look at this conflict from Western sensibilities and fail to recognize that difference.
Death to Arabs became popular, to the point where Heike Grossman, an Israeli member of the Knesset and also a Holocaust survivor, would note that she found it so awful because the slogan was only one word different to the one that the Germans used to chant at her and that still rung in her ears. And it's worth noting that in the 1980s, this didn't end at just chanting death to Arabs at Palestinians. No, multiple Palestinians were attacked, and the Israeli press made some shocking discoveries in the Israeli military. They found squads of Israeli soldiers referring to themselves as the Mengele unit, who had extensive plans to mass murder Palestinians.
Hot take, Ethan knows he's in the wrong. He knows he's out of his depth on this issue, but he's built too big a hole for himself to climb out of. His ego won't let him. It's like when I know I'm wrong when I get a fight with my little brother, but I keep fighting anyways because I don't want to look dumb. Yeah.
Palestinians. So why is it that Ethan thinks that, you know, someone who is a 19-year-old who supports the Houthis is a bad guy? He's an evil terrorist. But the same doesn't go for all Israelis. You know, he might say, well, I don't like this excess. I don't actually support this kind of thing. Does every single Yemeni who rejects Israel, protests against it, and wants to take up arms against it, hold horrifying anti-Semitic views? No, no. There are many who just oppose the state of Israel because its treatment of Palestinians and hold a strong disdain for America because of what it has helped to do to their country for decades. But luckily for Ethan, you know, this was the 1980s, the chant death to Arabs, it's not so popular anymore. You know, just a couple of fringe Israelis, they were the guys.
It's important to note the Houthis are Zaydis. The Zaydi imamate in Yemen was very beloved by Yemeni Jews. When the Zaydi imam was killed by Republicans, a Yemeni Jew poet wrote a requiem for him, like Jews lived in Yemen since biblical days and did not face a single pogrom or prosecution like in Europe. Well, yeah, I mean, initially, pre-Israel, the entire MENA region, straight up, across the board, with some exceptions of like Christian-backed pogroms under the Ottoman rulership, was seen as a safe haven as opposed to Russia or Western or Eastern Europe, as a matter of fact. Time and time again, Jews that escaped pogroms or even the Spanish purges that took place came to the Ottoman Empire because the Ottoman Empire was a safe haven. What about the tax under the Ottomans? Every non-Muslim paid a tax in the Ottoman Empire. They were able to freely practice their religion and do whatever they wanted. They had more rights under the Ottoman Empire than they did anywhere else. And also, Muslims, on the other hand, paid a separate tax, zakat. So it's not like only the Jews paid jizya. Christians also paid jizya. Muslims paid zakat.
Chanting it and stuff, you know, not everyone. Oh wait, hang on a second. One of its key proponents who used to chant it a lot, Itamar.
Yeah, and the jizya tax was lower than the zakat, and also did not come with an obligation to fight as well. You didn't have to serve in the military. Unless you were Dev Shirmeh, which is very different. Dev Shirmeh is a practice of taking non-Muslims from a young age and then training them to become some of the best fighters in the Ottoman Empire. Anyway, I'm diving into the weeds of Ottoman history now, so I'm not going to do that.
Is now Israel's Minister of National Security. Oh, it's okay, though. He doesn't actually say...
I hate it when you talk about this. You fail to recognize that some things are the other way around, sometimes unfortunately too, but it's okay. We will have a conversation about minorities in the Middle East later. Balkan chatters light the whenever I talk about this. It's not something that I am defending. I am not defending any of these practices. I do not think that the Dev Shirmeh system was good. Okay? Holy dude, my mom is yelling from the other room saying the Byzantines used it as well.
Death to Arabs anymore. Here's a video of him saying that he now says death to terrorists and encourages others because it is legal with a government stamp of approval. But when you consider that this man refers to all Palestinians as terrorists, including the mother of an autistic Palestinian who was murdered in cold blood by Israeli security forces, what is there to say? This guy has transformed Israel's prisons into even worse torture dungeons than they already were. I mean, there's decades of the horrifying treatment by Israeli prison officers of Palestinians, but it's only worsened in recent years. And Ethan doesn't see this as a sickness within Israeli society. He doesn't see it as indicative of the monstrous nature of their ideology, their movement. He thinks that there is still something redeemable about Israel. But what is there redeemable about this? Why is it that you would make a video this long condemning Hasan Piker for interviewing a 19-year-old, for showing Houthi music videos? Why is it that you would spend your time doing this when Israelis are out here doing these kind of things? And it does not End there. One of the other most common chants that you consistently hear from Israeli soldiers is "May your village burn." Here's a video of the Israeli soldiers chanting it before they go out and actually do that in Gaza.
Let it burn, baby, this house is on fire. This house is on fire.
This is a man who claims that he thinks there is a genocide in the Gaza Strip, yet he spends his time talking about the Houthi slogans. He doesn't talk about the Israeli slogans. He doesn't talk about this as a sickness in Israeli society. I have said it over and over again. He sees Yemenis and Middle Easterners who are not Jewish from Israel as monstrous savages, whose ideologies are different, whose motivations are different to those of Israel, Jewish people and Americans. He is a man who exceptionalizes the state of Israel in order to make himself feel better about his horrifying right-wing views which justify the slaughter of scores and scores of colonized people across the entire region. But all of that's okay because, as Ethan puts it, they're the bad guys.
Israeli Rudy was saying that Palestinians are taught at 2 years old to kill Americans.
That's pretty spicy.
Yeah.
Do we have that one?
Like Kamala,
the other one.
I could add it.
You're excusing people being burned alive and kids being murdered. You're saying Israel does that on the daily. Okay. Now I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. So are you denying that? So are you not denying that? So are you
Now look, I don't want to critique Ethan's personal relationship with his wife, Hila Klein, or the Raider of Ramallah as she is sometimes known, because it's ultimately unimportant for this video. But what is important is that it is one of the clear reasons that he deploys Orientalism, to make himself feel better about the clear incongruency between his consistent lack of condemnation of his wife and her behaviour and his constant condemnation of people like Rashid al-Haddad, who have never even served in a military, yet he sees them as terrorists. Now, as I'm sure that many of you know, Hila served in the IOF, the Israeli military. It's where she came by the nickname, the Raider of Ramallah. And she maintains that, she was just doing a desk job for a senior IOF terrorist, a senior figure within Israel's occupation. She was just doing a desk job for him. But then she got bored and one day wanted to go onto a raid in Ramallah, a space which Ethan refers to as a terrorist city. Just watch this clip.
For stuff, because what did you do? What was your role in the military?
At first, I was given a role that was like in an office somewhat close to my house in Tel Aviv. And it was kind of like going to a day job in an office. It happened right after there was some kind of a second war in, where was it, in Gaza?
That, yeah.
There was some sort of a small war when I was there. And so my job was to, like, when they send officers or like people to go serve, I had to like logistically help with like their hotel or a room, things like that. But it was all on the computer. It just felt like some computer thing.
Right, okay. So secretary.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was super boring and I really hated it. Because it was just like, I had to take a bus super early, go there, spend the whole day, go back home. I hated it. So I tried to change my role. And it was something like you can apply for it and it's a form that you fill out and then they're going to give you something else completely random.
Different
you have no
position,
idea.
different post,
different
location.
So I decided to do that. And if I don't like the second one, then I'll just find a way to get out of the army.
It was that bad?
Yeah, I hated everything about it, didn't want to do it. Because if you're doing something that it felt like I wasn't doing anything, I was just wasting my life.
Yeah.
It could get really...
Dude, that's what's so crazy about it is like, I didn't know this clip existed at the time when I did Leftovers to Ethan. And like, I had seen some of the things that Ethan has said at the very least about Israel. And my assumption immediately was like, there's no way that they would ever be defensive of Israel post October 7. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's Ethan himself has said so many things about Israel, about how it sucks. You know what I mean? Just like how awful it was. And it's wild that he's just done an about face on it, but in the opposite direction since then.
Really frustrating, I don't know.
Right.
And you got to do it for 2 years.
Right.
So I filled out that form and I tried it, and then I somehow ended up in a better place that I liked a lot more. before it was a daily thing where you go back home every day, and the new one was in a way that was a base that was far from my house. So you go there for the whole week, and then you come back for the weekend.
So you preferred that? Were you gone for a week?
I did.
Interesting. Why?
It was kind of like just more of an adventure, more of a different experience that I preferred than to just go to a boring job, sit on the computer, and go back home at the end of every day. I don't know.
Were you doing secretary work there?
So yeah, I was the secretary of the head of the. There's like a, I don't know the terms in English from the army.
Right. Who's that officer?
So there was I was in Dukhifat, which is like a brigade, I guess, that's in charge of the area of Ramallah, and that brigade has like a main officer. So I was his secretary.
Okay, so you were right below the big boy. Cool.
So it was nice. It was interesting. It was more demanding in a way, but also kind of more rewarding because
you told me once you went on like a mission with them to like a terrorist city.
Yeah.
That was kind of a crazy story.
Yeah. So my officers and like the soldiers in that brigade, they would go every night on a raid.
Right.
In Ramallah to arrest terrorists, and so.
That nighttime raid by people who were also in the Israeli occupying forces that then joined Breaking the Silence, which is a philanthropic organization comprised of former Israeli occupying force vets who are against the occupation, has been clearly branded as an act of terror, for the record. It is not to arrest terrorists. You would be the terrorist by the legal standard in that instance. You're not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to be there as an occupying force. You're not supposed to be there with arms. Israel's illegally occupying Ramallah, as well as the rest of the West Bank. Make no mistake, okay? And the purpose of those night raids is not to actually arrest terrorists. The purpose of those night raids, which, by the way, everyone's a terrorist according to Israel. The purpose of those night raids is to instill terror, ironically enough. It is to make your presence known, to constantly be a force upon the Palestinian population, an illegal force. This isn't like just immoral, it is also illegal.
I always saw them preparing for it and leaving, and then I would stay in the base. So
a big part of this also was documented in the now Oscar award-winning documentary, No Other Land. Actions such as the one that she partook in.
Time I wanted to go with them just to experience it.
Why, you just were all of a sudden had an urge to go with them?
I just wanted to see what it's like. I wanted to see it.
And there you have it. She did this because she was bored. So why doesn't Ethan condemn her as an evil terrorist? Why doesn't he think that she should be destroyed along with members of the Houthis? What is the difference between her and a Yemeni person who hasn't even fought against another country? Well, let's actually just have a look at more of what these two have to say.
To serve like everybody else in the country. I mean, it's a very selfish move to decide, okay, I'm not going to do it, but everybody else will.
Like Israel as a...
I think here they're talking about me not serving in the Turkish military, by the way, if I'm not mistaken.
As a place, the mentality of growing up there, like everybody feels an obligation to protect, to serve, to nurture this place that feels like the only place in the world where they can live and be Jewish and not be like discriminated against.
I mean, when you're growing up with constant terror attacks, the army is a necessity.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if people think that's a controversial statement. That is the reality of Israel.
Oh my God.
So,
you're right. The army is a necessity. If you're a occupying force, of course the army is a necessity. You're constantly terrorizing people that you're illegally occupying the lands of. Yeah, no other place on the planet except for the apartheid state of Israel where Jews can be totally safe. A place where the Israeli army is illegally occupying the lives of 2.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank in direct violation of international law. And also on the other side, another 2 million Palestinians in the beginning of Israel's genocide. Now those numbers have reduced, according to Trump's estimate, to like 1.7 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, dominating their lives, killing them every single day. That's the only way that Jews can be safe in Israel. What a ridiculous crock of shit. I maintain the position that no country has simply a right to exist, but a country like Israel that is set up as an apartheid on the principles of ethno-religious supremacy with an exterminationist ideology on indigenous soil that they seek to eradicate and seek to destroy certainly does not have a right to exist. That's ridiculous. This is not a controversial statement at all.
Person to decide I'm not going to do it is a very selfish decision because meanwhile you're not doing it, everybody else is doing it and putting their life on hold. Very important years of your personal development, you're putting it on hold to go do this, and it helps nothing with your career afterwards. You finish it, then you start your
you don't even need
actual
to defend
life.
yourself. It's just normal.
And I just want to note something before I analyse this clip here. Lying for Ethan and Hila is a very dangerous game because you have published the vast majority of your life on the internet for well over a decade now. I've been watching you since I was 14, really. And what you said, first of all, was that, you know, Hila didn't actually want to serve in the IOF, that, you know, she was kind of forced to. But I think
maybe clarify by saying no country has a right to exist. That's what I said. I literally started off by saying that. That was the first statement I made. Like, the idea that like any country has a right to exist is a silly one to begin with. Like, people have a right to exist, okay? But it's so funny. You didn't hear me say exactly those words verbatim and said, hey man, you better clarify.
I think what's becoming clearer is that both of you are letting the mask slip more and more, because in that original clip you claimed, oh, it was mandatory and all of these things, but now Ethan is saying that it is a necessity and Hila is saying that people who don't serve are shameful. That's not really congruent with the idea that you didn't want to serve, is it now? And Ethan and Hila are claiming here that the IOF is a necessity because of the really serious threats that Israel faces, terror every single day. But what are these threats? Where do they come from? Is there any context to them? Or are they just the result of the barbarous anti-Semitism that Jewish people face every single day in the Middle East? Well, of course they're not. And it's so ridiculous for Ethan to sit there and claim that he is pro-Palestine, because once again we can pick apart another part of his ideology. So Ethan says in the content nuke that he thinks Israeli settlers in the West Bank are colonial settlers.
Condemned Netanyahu as a war criminal. They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal. Called the West Bank settlements an abomination. Settlers in the West Bank are religious zealots, they're monsters, they're genocidal. I've even said the West Bank settlers are valid military targets.
This doesn't also make sense because, like, at the time when he said that, I didn't even realize that Hila had literally participated in a raid. What is the raid supposed to be? Why are people saying his lawyer?
When you talk about like colonial settlers and stuff, like that's what's actually happening in the West Bank right now. And these people are more or less valid military targets, in my opinion.
I mean, I'm not really sure that he knows what this means. But anyway, he thinks they're valid military targets. But he doesn't have a problem with his wife who served in that area, who raided terrorist cities. He has no problem with that. He said just a few days ago that he is proud of what his wife did.
And like, and I mean, to me, it's like, that's shameful and it's embarrassing. Hila served her country. She did her civic duty. And I think that's a good thing, that, you know, regardless, like just in general. Right?
But at the same time, he's against the occupation. He's against the extremities of Israeli society. What does he think Israeli soldiers do in the West Bank? They're not just having fun or protecting Israel. They are maintaining Israel's colonial regime in the West Bank. They are there so as to ensure that the Israeli occupation does not face any form of serious resistance. She was arresting people, most likely for opposing it. Who knows whether that was via armed resistance or peaceful means? I mean, Israel doesn't make a distinction. It doesn't even offer people trial before it begins its horrifying torture of them. I mean, Ethan Klein is a guy who claims that he thinks that there is a genocide going on in Gaza, yet simultaneously thinks that it is shameful not to serve in the Israeli military, that it is some kind of necessity.
Yeah, it doesn't. This is the problem. You have to look at like the overwhelming amount of his coverage on this issue to get a good grasp of like what he truly believes. Because there have been instances where he has said the things that he just added onto the context puke. Ironically enough, the major inconsistency that is that's a great demonstration of this, a great demonstration of the other inconsistency we're talking about is the fact that he also brings up the $6,500 donation that he made to my fundraiser. Okay. That fundraiser where we raised, alongside this entire community, where we raised $1.6 million, I believe, in the immediate aftermath of October 7. He uses that to say, look, I'm pro-Palestine. Look, I gave $6,500. Like, how could I be anti-Palestine?
Despite what you've read on TikTok and Twitter, I've donated $6,500 to a Palestinian charity after the war started.
Hey, Ethan Klein, thank you for the dono. Ethan Klein gave $6,500. And then he chooses to deplatform the guy whose fundraiser he gave money to, and also has continued to say, oh, these guys raise funds, the Creators for Palestine charity that we also set up together. That charity is negligible. It's meaningless. It's so stupid.
Creators for Palestine raised $1.6 million. That's fantastic. Literally negligible. They've received billions of dollars. It's a good thing. Has $1.6 million had an outcome on anything happening in Gaza? Absolutely not. Has it helped people? Sure. Has it helped the actual like movement? No. Like raise money. That's good. That's the easiest thing you can do is just give money, right? Good. Let's talk about real activism. Let's talk about enacting meaningful change. Total failures.
My $6.5 thousand, on the other hand, very, very important. Very important. It doesn't make any sense. Like, do you see the inconsistency there? On the one hand, he thinks it's stupid to fundraise for Palestine. But on the other hand, he uses that as a form to say, look, I'm pro-Palestine. You see? This is inconsistent. How does no one see this in his audience? It's just like on basic principles. This is an inconsistent position to have.
Does this guy think that actually talking about Palestine and Israel on the internet is securing him? Every single time he opens his mouth, he puts his foot in it because he has no understanding. He has no coherent position. He just condemns the excesses of Israel without ever confronting what he actually supports. And I mean, he claims that Israel is under threat. He does it in the content nuke as well. He claims, oh, you know, Israel's under these threats. It has been since it was established. But where do these threats come from? I mean, Hezbollah, for example. What is the actual context of it? Well, Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. Hezbollah largely came from that. It gained legitimacy through fighting against Israel, through driving them out in 2000, driving them out in 2006. It became popular. Lebanese people liked it because it stood up to Israel. And by the way, the crimes that Israel has committed against the Lebanese people are truly unbelievable. Since the ceasefire came into effect, who is the one terrorizing the people of Lebanon? Who is the one consistently carrying out bombardments during a ceasefire? It is absolutely obscene that this man sits here and tries to overplay the threats that Israel faces that come from its settler colonial nature. And the same goes for the terror attacks. Look, innocent civilians being killed is not a good thing, but Ethan claims that he opposes colonial settlers. He claims that he thinks there is a genocide. He says all of these things, but he lets his wife go on about how there are terror attacks every day. Does he not see that since the inception of the Zionist project in the early 20th century, Palestinians realized that they had to resist against what the Zionists were doing? They knew that the Zionists wanted to build a state that did not involve the Palestinians, where the Zionist project would be dominant over them. And so Palestinians have resisted ever since that date. And Ethan even seems to say that he thinks settlers in the West Bank are valid targets, but he doesn't carry that same energy for people who settle outside the Gaza Strip, who live on the lands of the people who were expelled to Gaza in 1948 during the Nakba. He doesn't
Ironically, this is something that I try to get him to understand as well.
Doesn't care about that, you know, that doesn't matter. He's more interested in trying to talk about the Mizrahi Jewish people brought over to Israel after the expulsion of the Palestinians, rather than talking about the suffering of the Palestinians and actually contextualizing why they might resist.
What is this? Man really typing? Supporting central authority while never making eye contact? Bro's typing Marxist takes with a fingernail he can measure rice with? Standing the state but can't handle eye contact or finish wetting toilet seats? Guy in here just alt-tab to reread his own Discord messages for tone. You don't have to look over your shoulder. It must be weird seeing yourself in the reflection of your screen when you're trying to disappear. Someone just adjusted their glasses and held their breath for 3 seconds. Love how some people in the chat are like they're scared their professor's going to grade their casual text messages. Man really out here typing with fingernails longer than his attention span. Imagine defending China while sounding like you're asking permission to speak every time. Who the is this guy talking about? Is he talking about me? What? Are you all right, dude? Why are you reading all that? I don't know. He got timed out. It's crazy. I think he just needs medical attention.
Would rather resort to, as he did with the Houthis and any other group, claiming that they are some kind of violent anti-Semitic savages. For Ethan, militant groups in the Middle East are irrational savages who carry out violence against Israel and America because of their horrifying ideologies. But people like Hila, who serve in the Israeli military, an entity who, as I have said over and over again, engages in all of the crimes which Ethan allegedly so hates, he thinks that that is a necessity. He thinks that she is some kind of rational person. But what is rational about defending the colonization of an indigenous people's land? He says that he thinks Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, but he thinks it's necessary for Israeli soldiers to serve in it, and he thereby condemns the tiny amount of Israelis with an actual conscience who don't serve and go to prison for a few months. People like Tal Mitnick, who I've actually spoken to, who I said over and over again, oh, it's a brave thing what you're doing, and he said, nah, laughing my ass off, it's the bare minimum. Because the truth
I've had Tal on this broadcast as well.
is that how can you sit there and say, oh, I think there's a genocide going on, I think that Netanyahu's a war criminal, but not say, actually, it's wrong to help and aid and abet that. Hila served in the Israeli military on the back end of the Second Intifada, a period which is often portrayed as explosive Palestinian violence, where poor Israeli civilians were targeted for no reason. But it, of course, has context. It came after a major provocation by Ariel Sharon, and it...
Murad is watching me right now from right now. He's standing right next to me, away from the camera. And I said, what's up? What are you doing? And he went, Philip DeFranco is not live this week, so I'm forced to watch you instead. I need to beat his ass, dude. Worst brother of all time.
Also led to the murder of 4 times as many Palestinians. They also received horrifying collective punishment. The Jenin refugee camp was leveled. I mean, look at this photo. There were mass curfews, schools closed, people arrested, beaten, homes taken over by Israeli soldiers, and massive torture of Palestinians. How dare you sit there and make a distinction between your wife, who had no problem with serving in an army that did those things, and by the way, also took huge amounts of human shields. Here are articles about it. How dare you sit there and somehow try and make that acceptable, something that you say you are proud of. You may say that your wife is just a secretary, but Israel's occupation of the West Bank, its torturous regime, its brutalization and murder of innocent Palestinians would not be possible without those desk secretaries who make the cogs go round. This man's politics are right-wing and disgusting, and he makes himself feel better about them by just deploying Orientalism, by portraying Israel and America as enlightened countries who don't engage in misogyny, slavery, bigotry against other people, who aren't irrational, who aren't hateful. But of course, he is unwilling to confront the fact that these are all charges which should be levelled against Israel and America, who have perpetrated them on far grander scales than any group he hates. Now let's move on to some clips of Ethan spreading some of the most despicable Zionist talking points that have been utilised to perpetrate Israel's horrifying crimes in the Gaza Strip.
When civilians get murdered in Gaza, that's a dub for Hamas because it raises it creates more pressure on Israel from the outside forces. He's got more people talking, more people outraged. So it's both. It is both Israel is blowing up buildings and killing a ton of innocent people. But people who pretend that Hamas is anything but a barbaric terrorist group that intentionally kills its own people for political gain is lying to themselves, dude. Holy. They literally put command centers under hospitals. That's not even debated.
It is.
They were keeping some of the hostages in.
It's actually not debated, but not in the direction that Ethan thinks. Yes, it's not debated because Israel made this false claim, and then nobody really followed through on it when they showed zero evidence to suggest the matter. So the idea that Hamas puts command and control centers is not debated is a correct statement, just not in the direction that Ethan thinks. He's wrong.
In hospitals, too. It seems like a lot of them ran through hospitals. That's it. I mean, it's just logical, right?
Now, for someone who is self-proclaimed to be against the genocide in the Gaza Strip and also pro-Palestinian, to hear a talking point like this spread is truly disgusting. You cannot reconcile these two things because all of the evidence points to the fact that Israel has lied. It has been unable to support outrageous claims that it made, such as the claim that there was a terror base and command center under the Al-Shifa hospital that was used to raid it, to make patients there suffer. And I mean, babies literally died in their incubators because they had to be left. They rotted and decomposed because of talking points like this. Israel has struck and targeted hospitals over and over again because of talking points like this. It has arrested Palestinian doctors, tortured them to death, perhaps even sexually, like Adnan al-Bursh. But for pro-Palestinian anti-genocide Ethan Klein, there's no debate about it. But that's just not true. Just a few months ago, one of the International Criminal Court's lead prosecutors, Andrew Cayley, noted claims of Hamas in hospitals had been grossly exaggerated. This is a man who was appointed by the UK's...
Have you considered that he was saying that anti-Semitically? Have you considered that he is pro-Hamas?
Racist Home Secretary in its recent history, Suella Braverman, a woman who is unequivocally pro-Israel, and he is saying this. He is saying that it is likely Israel has grossly exaggerated its claims. Then you have Forensic Architecture, who highlighted that Israel lied at the International Court of Justice about a militant fighting inside hospital boundaries. They debunked it clearly. People do not want to talk about this. And then let's move on to what Craig Mohiba said. As he noted, the mere presence of armed forces of members of the enemy in populated civilian areas does not constitute the use of human shields. Indeed, Israel should carefully consider the implications of its repeated claims that it does, given that it maintains its military headquarters in a busy section of Tel Aviv. Ethan has spread one of the most deadly Zionist lies. It is truly despicable. For this man to try and sit there and claim that he is pro-Palestine is utterly obscene. And it's provable that the Israeli military just make up numbers when it comes to claims about terrorists or militants. You had this Haaretz article which stated that of 200 people who crossed an arbitrary line invented by Israel, which they executed, less than 10% of them had any link to Hamas. Or you have this article from the BBC about Israel's bombardment of Lebanon, where Israel made the claim, oh, we were bombing a Hezbollah command center, we were only targeting militants, we were eliminating Hezbollah commanders. But of the 73 people killed, only 68 of which could be verified, likely because they were torn to shreds and their families will never even get to bury them. Only 6 of them had links to Hezbollah's military wing. None of them held a senior rank. The other 62 of them were civilians, 23 children. And they were killed. And Israel lied, and people like Ethan believe it, and they show it to their audience of millions of people. Tell them these kind of lies that are currently killing people in the Middle East. These are the claims which undergird Israel's genocide. This is the way that the consent is manufactured, which makes Israel's slaughter possible. This is why people are so anti-Israel, America, and the media in our countries. And as I have said over and over again, to the point where it is getting tired, for someone who claims to be pro-Palestine and anti-genocide to say these things is despicable, but it still shows you his Orientalism, this distinction in the way that the other fights. They are savages who lie, who want their own civilians killed, not like Israel. No, Israel's a moral nation. His wife was in their army, you know, it's something that he's proud of. And I'd like to end with a very short segment about the recent anti-Hamas protests in Gaza that Ethan, like many other liberals who purport to be pro-Palestine but in reality are Zionists, has not been able to get over.
Ethan said you wouldn't have a career if you didn't have a podcast with him, Lamau. I think I'd probably have a better career right now if I never encountered Ethan Klein, if I'm being totally honest. A big part of his haters, and even like members, like a lot of content creators on the left, put me in the crosshairs for my association with him and started dunking on me way harder. It was definitely a reputational hit. You hadn't heard that, Lamau? No, I had not heard that. The reason why Ethan had me on as a co-host on his podcast was not because he was giving me a leg up. I was averaging 30,000 viewers back then. The f are you talking about? If anything, it probably was reputational damage. He said you had under 10K viewers prior to October 7 and that the podcast revived you. Wait, what? Yeah, I think he, yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, sure.
This man has been so excited about them. He's found a new way to condemn Hasan, to say, oh, he's more pro-Hamas than me. Oh, I think that these are the only way to end Israel's genocide, and they're going to be brilliant. But what I would like to say is, look, no one who knows anything about Palestine should be surprised that there is anti-Hamas sentiment in Gaza. Life is very difficult in the Gaza Strip. During times like this, people turn against their government. And so I wouldn't actually have a problem with Ethan covering them if he hadn't used them as yet another way to excuse Israel's genocide. Because Ethan has posted a plethora of stories about this, but I just want you to watch this very short clip where Ethan effectively says that
No, he specifically said that you do pro-Palestine content for the clout, not recognizing that your viewership took a hit because of it. Perhaps if that was the case, maybe he could use a little bit of that clout by doing actually pro-Palestine content then. Ironically enough, a third of my community left because of my insistence on covering Israel's atrocities every single day after October 7, including the podcast that I had with Ethan that he did not want to continue doing because of our disagreements on Israel, and also the fact that he could not handle the backlash that he was receiving. Yeah. I covered Palestinian emancipation extensively before our podcast. I covered it before October 7 as well.
These are the only means to end Israel's genocide.
The reason you don't see this, and I mean, Israel's forced them into a point of desperation where like they're willing to risk their lives, but like protesting against Hamas publicly is a grim.
You lost so many viewers after 10-7 for standing by your beliefs. He cannot imagine that. No, he can, because he's losing viewers because he's standing by his beliefs. The problem is his beliefs are immoral. That's the difference. And also inside of him, there is like still a conscience that is probably putting him at odds with his output, putting him at odds with what he's saying about Israel. He has to maintain this like moral superiority about being pro-Palestine. He has to lie to himself.
It's a grim outlook. That is not something you want to do. Hamas, just read their charter. Listen to what they say. They're Islamic. They're violent.
They're Islamic.
And, you know, protesters, and it's known that protesters, people that there who dissent against Hamas, get scooped up, get punished, disappear.
Now, if at this point you don't believe that Ethan is Orientalist and creates a distinction between them and us, he literally refers to one of the reasons for Hamas being so dangerous as them being Islamic. I think if I were to say that Israel is the way it is because it is Jewish, he would make videos about me calling me an anti-Semite.
Oh yeah. 100p. 100p. As a matter of fact, he does that anyway. He does that when people make the distinction between Zionism and Judaism, which is the truth, by the way, despite the endless efforts to conflate the two falsely. Ethan will turn around and say, all Jews are Zionists, and you're basically just substituting Jew for the term Zionist. So much so that his advocacy on the matter, paired up with the Anti-Defamation League, also known by its common name, the Apartheid Defense League, went and got the term Zionist barred. In Twitch TOS, they made Zionist a protected subcategory. It would be like Twitch saying, yeah, you can't say Nazi. It's a protected category. That was after Ethan's attempts of not only deplatforming me, but going after Twitch, the entire platform, claiming that this platform was the most anti-Semitic platform of all time, despite the fact that he was doing this on YouTube, where many of the content creators he claimed were, being anti-Semitic alongside actual anti-Semitic content creators, still have a career on that platform that he's on.
Completely insane that he would say this, especially when you consider that Israel's violence against non-violent protesters is off the charts. During the First Intifada, a mass uprising that was largely non-violent, Israel deployed some of the most horrifying torture that you could possibly imagine. And you can read about how horrifying this torture was in texts such as On Gaza Beach. Yitzhak Rabin, someone who is considered one of the most peace-loving Israeli prime ministers, issued an order to break the bones of non-violent protesters. And this isn't something that went away.
Bro is still obsessing over Ethan, not like he makes a comedy podcast. I don't know. I don't think it's really funny to do genocide defense over and over again. Also, it's really hilarious to say I'm the one obsessing over Ethan when every single time I even briefly cover the subject matter, let alone an entire video from a separate content creator dissecting some of the insane things that he's done, chatters come to me with 100 different instances where he has said something absolutely insane over the course of the past couple of weeks that I didn't even know about. I also said he is supposed to be a comedian, and he said he wasn't one, so I don't know which one it is. Rent-free? Okay, chatter. Yeah. Rent-free. You're right. So rent-free that the person that I'm rent-free in the mind of is saying he wants to sue me and apparently talk to a civil litigator the other day about possibly getting me charged with promoting domestic terrorism. How many Instagram stories have I made about Ethan Klein? How many Instagram stories he's made about me? How many episodes has he talked about me? How many episodes has he dedicated entirely to me or my friends? It's pretty funny that I don't have to actually say anything. He just constantly gets in trouble on his own because everyone can see that he is behaving in this hysterical manner.
Israel's response to the Great March of Return, a march that initially was not supported by Hamas, although later they didn't come out against it, but was largely non-violent. Israel responded by shooting Palestinians. Look at this one, where an Israeli sniper brags about maiming 42 Palestinians in one day. These were horrifying, traumatic injuries that led to people losing their legs and being unable to walk. But Ethan would never dare to say that Israel is an innately violent country, that it is this way because it is Jewish. No, because that's not acceptable. But when
Ethan accused Sam Cedar of saying the N-word, then stories about the backlash by talking about you? What?
When it comes to Muslims and people from the Middle East, he sees them as different. He sees the way they behave.
He said you watched that clip yesterday, Lamau.
As unacceptable because of where they come from and because of the fact that they challenge the dominance of the West and Israel.
I mean, listen, I feel like this is a force that's going to help end the war, not fucking keeping hostages and underground and like sending, just continuing to provoke Israel to attack them.
And the core problem with this is that the Israeli government doesn't care about the hostages. The Israeli government doesn't care about Hamas. Just a few days ago, Benjamin Netanyahu stated that voluntary migration was the plan, that they would control the Gaza Strip. That's it. They're not hiding it. It's a plan. Anyone can discuss it with them. They are openly planning to ethnically cleanse 2 million people. Why are you obsessing over these protests? They are not going to save the Palestinians. They are not going to end the suffering. The genocide that you allegedly condemn, the thing that you have spread the propaganda that has enabled, Israel is just ramping up the destruction. It's why they blew up the Turkish cancer hospital, the only cancer hospital in the Gaza Strip. No one's going to be getting any cancer treatment there anymore. Where are they going to have to go? Other countries. They won't come back. Gaza is gone to the Zionists, and anyone who is going, well, if Hamas released the hostages, it would save everything, is wrong. The only answer to this situation is massive, massive pressure on Israel. But that's not what Ethan wants. Ethan is planning on taking a trip to Israel to show you its real side. But what real side is there to Israel when it is a country that is openly planning to perpetrate the greatest crime of the 21st century? You can say, oh, I don't like Netanyahu, I don't like this, I don't like that. It won't change anything. The Israeli military that you are proud of your wife serving in is going to expel millions of Palestinians from Gaza. Then it will turn on the West Bank. Then it will turn on Palestinians inside Israel proper. And you want to go and show your supporters this wonderful side to it. It is one of the most obscene and shocking things that
Zone of interest, straight up,
has come out of Ethan Klein's mouth over the last year and a half. Because it is not only that as he goes, Israel will be implementing its plan to expel 2 million people, it is also that what he loves and enjoys about Israel is inextricably linked from the dispossession, marginalization, and extermination of the Palestinian people historically, the Nakba, the consistent displacement of Palestinians. But it is also linked to the fact that only a few hundred miles away, if even that, in the West Bank, Palestinians will be being expelled. Communities will be being wiped away. There will be violent pogroms against Palestinians. And Ethan is just going to ignore it. He will not care because he wants to show you the real side. But the two are inextricably linked. So Ethan Klein is a confused Zionist who wishes to disavow the most extreme and unacceptable aspects of Israel's genocidal violence against Palestinians, but he cannot abandon his Zionism. He is unwilling to see that Hamas, far from being the sickness, is but a symptom of Israeli settler colonialism, the true sickness that plagues Palestine. From its very inception, Zionism was rejected and resisted by the indigenous Palestinian people. They never wanted to give Palestine away to colonizers who came with the explicit goal of marginalizing the population of Palestine, destroying their alternative mode of existence, and eliminating their cultural and historical contributions to the land of Palestine. And so until Ethan can see that there is no Zionism without the Nakba, without the current expulsion of Palestinians, without the settlement in the West Bank, this man will remain forever a confused Zionist who will continue to aid and abet Israel's extermination of the Palestinian people.
Yeah. That's all I got for today, folks.